Yo, what's going on, guys? Link in the description. But in a recent podcast from my colleague Michael Scotto at HoopsHype, link in the description, he had Chris Fedor of Cleveland.com, and they discussed Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen might be trade candidates. So let's get right into it. I'm going to take a sip of this iced tea. While I take a sip of this iced tea, you guys should hit that like and subscribe button and tell me down below what do you guys think of the idea of Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen being traded. First off, before we say anything, Jarrett Allen's on an incredible deal. He was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's going to have a lot of value. Darius Garland, he had a down year on similar usage rate, and he might have plateaued as a player. I like him, but the problem is he has a really bad contract. Like, do you want to be paying Darius Garland almost $50 million a year by the end of it? Now, look, in a report or a podcast, Scotto and Fedor discuss whether Garland and Allen are trade candidates. Scotto reveals that Cleveland continues to assure teams that they are not trying to move Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen, according to league sources that told HoopsHype. Kobe Altman emphasized their plus-minus ratings and reiterated that they still see Garland as an all-star caliber player. Garland, being under contract for the next 4 years, would require a significant offer to be considered for trade. Jarrett Allen's situation is a bit more complex. I've said they probably view Evan Mobley now more as a center than a power forward because of his lack of shooting, and they probably realize as for Mobley to continue growing, they need to move on from Allen. As the Cavaliers would like to keep him, they need to determine if Mobley is the long-term 4 or 5. The organization has prioritized Mobley as a franchise cornerstone over Jarrett Allen. Michael Scotto also mentions that there has been some chatter about Cleveland's potential interest in Brandon Ingram. Now, we'll talk about that at the end of the video. But Brandon Ingram, however, is somebody that's from his conversation, that's just from Michael Scotto's conversation with the league sources. But Cleveland isn't keen on trading for Ingram and then having to pay him a substantial amount of money after his contract. New Orleans might value Garland if they were apart with Ingram, but the trade doesn't seem to fit Cleveland's strategy based on intel. Fedor also adds that Cleveland would have to be blown away to consider moving Garland and Allen. They have received offers for Allen in the past, as shown that he has a lot of interest around him in the league. However, there's also real interest in Garland, with San Antonio potentially considering him, unless a team like San Antonio offers Devin Vassell or somebody, one of their top assets that aren't Victor Wembanyama. It's unlikely Cleveland would accept. Scotto's mentioned that San Antonio has discussed, potentially going out there, or has been discussed as a team that could potentially go out there because they need a young point guard to go with Victor Wembanyama. And he questions whether Cleveland wants the 4th or 8th pick in a bad draft. He doubts that this move fits Cleveland's win now mantra. Fedor responds that Cleveland would only consider such trades if there's a clear pathway to get better right now, as trades are about strategic planning, and Cleveland believes the 4th and 8th pick could be valuable assets to reconfigure the roster, so they could consider it. However, he doubts, like I doubt, there's a star player out there who fits Cleveland's timeline that you're going to be able to get enough assets to trade for and fits the roster needs using those picks. If moving Garland and Allen, they would likely want more win-now players and ones that fit better around Mitchell and Mobley. So Fedor concludes that Cleveland doesn't view this past season as a failure. They were one of 8 teams to reach this conference semifinals and aren't coming off an embarrassing playoff exit like they did last year, which clearly indicated that the roster did improve, but they still need to improve the roster more. The front office likes the roster and believes the core of Mitchell, Garland, and Allen can be good, and they don't feel the need to break them up. So, are they trade candidates? I think if the price is right. Now, we'll talk about this right now, Brandon Ingram, just for this, but this will probably be chopped into these 2 videos. So, in a recent report from Chris Fedor and Michael Scotto on the HoopsHype podcast, links in the description, what we're hearing is that Michael Scotto mentioned that there had been some chatter about Cleveland's potential interest in Brandon Ingram. However, from Michael Scotto's conversations with league sources, Cleveland isn't keen on trading for Brandon Ingram and then having to pay him a substantial amount of money in an extension after his contract season. While New Orleans might value Garland if they were to part with Ingram, The trade doesn't seem to fit Cleveland's strategy based on intel. Same thing goes if they were willing to trade Allen, as Cleveland would need to be blown away to considering moving Garland and Allen, as they've received multiple offers for Allen over the past few years. But let's just sit down and talk about what could a Pelicans trade for. I first off think multiple first-round picks need to be involved for Garland or Allen, at least a first-round pick in this year's draft and a first-round pick in next year's draft, because they're going to probably try to use this year's pick. So let's just say they go after Garland, and they're going to go cheap on center down the road. I mean, I've talked about this to you guys before. What if they wanted both of those guys? Well, if they tried to get both of those guys, Garland and Allen make about $59.5 million, so I don't think that's going to happen. While if you did Brandon Ingram, you could literally package Brandon Ingram with, I think, Brandon Ingram and just, you do Brandon Ingram and two picks and Garland, and that could get it done, but I don't think that's what would get it done. It'd probably be Garland and Garland for Jordan Hawkins, 2 picks, and Brandon Ingram. But the other ways to do that deal, I've said before, the crazy Jared Allen and Darius Garland for like Brandon Ingram packaged with Larry Nance, Dyson Dan. I mean, you don't even need to package that Larry Nance. You could actually do the deal Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, which right there brings you to about like 9.5, plus Brandon Ingram's gets you to about already 45 million. You throw in the Matt Ryan, Jeremy Robinson, Earl, EJ Liddell's contracts, and right there that gets you to about 6.6, so you're already at like 52.6. So you could honestly right there eat the contract and then 52 all that and trade all those players for Jared Allen and Brandon Ingram. It just would never happen because you're gutting the roster. But it's actually quite possible for them to go out and get Brandon Ingram, split Brandon Ingram into both Garland and Allen in terms of salary. I just don't think they have the assets to convince the Cavaliers to do that trade. And plus, the whole thing with Brandon Ingram is Brandon Ingram at this point, I like the guy. He's 26 years old. But the thing is it feels like Brandon Ingram's older than 26 years old. As at this point, he's a guy who's played 8 NBA seasons. He's going into year 9, and he's never played more than 64 games. I guess he's played 79, but he hasn't played more than 64 games since, this was the most games he's actually played. All right, the guy doesn't play enough games, and that's the whole problem out here. So when you look at a guy like Jared Allen, Jared Allen and Darius Garland, it's worth trading for an injury-prone player, and then you would have a hole in the roster. So that's the whole other problem that becomes. So I think it's a bit harder to answer this one because I don't think there's a clear path to solving where, Brandon Ingram and I just think, I don't know. I want to hear your guys' thoughts.